in this field and what's interesting around research with children and young people and families. And I guess it was maybe on that point that I wanted to share a few things with you. So with that, as I say, I'm going to very quickly just share my screen. Oh, I'm not sure I can do that, Lynn. So maybe at the minute, if you can let me do that, and don't worry if you can't, because I can just talk through it. But I'll give that a little minute just to see if you are able to let me share my screen, Lynn. And if so, perfect. There we are, like magic. Right, okay. So I'm going to quickly just go through this little slideshow so that you can, get a flavour of what we do within the Mental Health Foundation. So there's my contact details, and I'm sure this can be sent out if that's helpful, or can be sit alongside the webinar. And if there's specific projects I mentioned today that you want more information, do just get in touch with me. Okay, so who we are within the Mental Health Foundation. So we're a UK-based public mental health charity. We work across the UK. So we've got offices in London, Glasgow and Cardiff, and a presence in Northern Ireland. And we really do have prevention at the heart of what we do. So this is our vision. We've got a vision for a world with good mental health for all. And our mission is around helping people to understand, protect and sustain their mental health. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of how we do that. So this presentation was from a year ago when it was our 70th anniversary. I wanted to just pull out the kind of specific pieces of work that we do. So first and foremost is research, and that we see that as being hand in hand with listening to community voices and lived experience voice. So I guess as a third sector organisation, we don't deliver services, so that sets us apart a little bit from some other mental health charities. And we very much see research and evidence being at the core of what we do. We try and ensure all our work's informed by research and evidence, and that our programmatic work is underpinned by strong evaluation. So, as I say, research is a core aspect of what we do, and a lot of that is around helping to build the evidence base around prevention. So that's one of the things that we do. Another thing is our campaigns. So you may know us as the home of Mental Health Awareness Week, which runs in May. And every Mental Health Awareness Week, we have a theme, and actually research is a core component of that. Quite often our teams develop research reports that sit alongside that theme that really help unpick that issue. So the last few years we've had issues like body image, the importance of kindness being at the heart of policy making and decision making in communities. And this year it was nature, the power of nature in terms of improving and sustaining our mental health. So research reports always sit alongside that. We also have policy, so we aim to ensure that or to advocate for prevention being at the heart of public policy making, and we have a number of influencing approaches that we use there. And then finally we have programs, so these kind of community-based programs that really use a test of change model, where we don't deliver services on an ongoing basis, but we are interested in interventions and how they work and who with. And that's either through interventions that we've developed ourselves and then we evaluate, or we get external evaluators for, or interventions that others are taking forward and we come in as the research and learning partner. And here is just a sample of some of the work that we've been involved in, just to give you a flavour of the breadth of work in terms of our research studies. So at the minute, for instance, just to give you a sense of that, we've got Thriving Learners. So Thriving Learners is a study into student mental health that we're currently conducting in partnership with University of Scotland. And it's looking to be a really interesting study. We've got over 15,000 responses from a survey, some qualitative interviews from stakeholders, and that's going to be launched in November this year. Right through to, so that's some primary research that we've led upon as an organisation, right through to our work that we do with CME and Barnardo's, where we are their research and learning partner. So we do the evaluation of their programmatic work. For Barnardo's, that's specific to this core priority programme, which is about creating systems change within children's services. And they've got 3 areas that they're working in around that. And for CME, it's clearly around anti-stigma and discrimination work. So we do all the evaluation work, but also some primary research too, and evidence reviews that helps inform the direction of these projects and these initiatives. So just a flavour. And also we've got things like our big coronavirus study. And I guess historically, it's fair to say that we're a social research organisation. That's where we sit. And probably historically, we do use mixed methodology, but quite often it's been qualitative, although more recently with things like our Thriving Learner study and coronavirus study, quants has been becoming an increasing part of our portfolio. So that is just to give you a sense of the work that we do. So I hope that's helpful for you. So I'm going to stop sharing and now take you on a little bit of a journey of how I got here. So as I said, I'm the associate director, so I have direct responsibility for our programmatic work, but also our research studies, our applied research studies. So yeah, I'm going to take you back on a few things. So I'm going to take you back to when I had first graduated. So back as 21-year-old Julie, I had just left the University of Manchester, which is where I studied, and I'd done a history and sociology degree. So yes, there was some research skill development within that, but I very definitely didn't see myself as a researcher. And if I'm very honest, I probably didn't really understand the breadth of what that meant. I suppose at that age, if you had asked me, I would have seen a researcher completely in academic terms as somebody who has done their undergraduate, then done a master's, then done a PhD, and then went on to have an academic role within an institution. And I guess the experience that I had turned that on its head a wee bit. I knew I didn't want to take that career path. So when I moved back to Scotland, after a few months of the obligatory waitressing, I was able to take up my first role, which was as a youth worker. And that really tapped into my interest at that moment and some of the volunteer work that I had done. So as I was undertaking this role and really getting stuck in with working with young people, I had a consortium of youth organisations within Govan, which is where I worked at that point, who approached me and said, would I be able to help them? At that point, there was real interest in exploring diversionary activities. There was quite a lot of territorialism and gang violence in Govan at that moment, and they wanted to really explore as youth organisations what they could do and where they could put in interventions that young people would engage with. And they left me with kind of pondering, well, what can I do? How can I engage with these young people? And I went away and found out, and I thought, oh, it looks as though this methodology of focus groups might be the thing that I want to do. But then I spoke to some of the young people, and the young people were saying, right, okay, so if you want to take us away and you want to hear all about our lives and what we do and what we get up to, then actually you need to have a bit of, you need to recognise, like show how much, you need to show what our value is within this. And that kind of left me with a bit of a conundrum around, okay, so how do I do that? I can't pay them for their time. And I quickly realised that what I could do is I could develop as part of that focus group really participatory methods, and we used kind of community mapping as an approach, but also combine that with an experience that lots of these young people wouldn't previously have had. And for that, it was a kind of outdoor experience. They got to go gorge walking. And there's a number of things that I learned in that. First was about the importance of recognising and valuing the time that they are giving you as research participants. And I didn't frame them as research participants then, I wouldn't have seen it in that light, but ultimately they were. And being really honest. So within this moment in Govan, when I was working there, there was a lot of interest in that area as quite a deprived area, but quite a traditional area in Scotland that was going through quite a big transition from being a kind of working class area into an area of high deprivation that had a lot of needs. And there were lots of academics coming into that area. And I guess the community were telling me, and the young people were telling me, they're asking for our opinion, they're asking for how we can change this. And some of them are kind of promising the earth in terms of what changes are going to be made. And we never see it. We never see any change, and we never even hear back around what's going on. So I was really clear with these young people about the parameters of the report that I was going to be writing, that it was going to go to this consortium of youth organisations, and they would consider the findings to develop these kind of diversionary activities. But I said, look, even if nothing happens, and I had to be honest that nothing might happen as a result of that, at least you get a chance to come out and have fun and have this positive experience, which is my way of valuing your contribution. So that was my first lesson, valuing contribution, recognising the value of them as participants and being honest. That was the first theme. Now, if I go on a little bit more than that, the second theme is based around, by this point, a few months later, I was now employed with Greater Glasgow Health Board as a youth health worker. And I had been approached to do a piece of work in Clydebank to identify what the barriers were for young people accessing youth-specific health services, where they might go. And that was a kind of big push in the city at that point to establish specific youth services around sexual health support, mental health, and drugs and alcohol. So here again, I thought, right, how can I do this in a way that feels meaningful? And the model that I ended up using and the approach that I ended up using was peer research. So I trained 4 young people in kind of interviewing techniques, and worked with these young people to really think through how we wanted to engage with other young people. And they decided they wanted to use kind of Vox Pop ideas, like a video. They didn't want to do just a dry research report. They said that wasn't relevant to young people and the lives of young people. They wouldn't read it. So they wanted to do it as a video. And it was just a fantastic introduction to participatory methodology, really. And it stuck with me. And actually, as a methodology, I try to bring it into as many research studies as I can. I think there is immense value in peer research and in participatory research and methodologies beyond peer research. I think there's an empowerment merit there. And I could see in these studies, the young people, the way that they were asking the questions and framing the questions, and the quick rapport that they were able to develop in a way that, even though I was young myself, I was still only maybe 22, but for a 14-year-old, that was still quite a bit of a distance traveled. And I was able to support those peer researchers, but really they did gain an insight. I quickly gained an insight that I just probably might have struggled to get. I might have got it eventually, but I would have had to have spent quite a bit of time building up trust with some of these young people for them to be as honest as they were very quickly with these peer researchers. So, and I actually think that now, even 20 odd years later after that study, that probably it's increasing the value that's placed on participatory research and peer research in particular, but it's still not quite there. It's valued at points as maybe a nice thing to do, but where's the real research? And I think we really need to challenge that and turn it on its head. So that's my kind of second theme, which is about the power of participation, essentially. And then my third theme, so this is a kind of the third thing that I'll introduce you to. And by this point, I was a few years in the role, and I very definitely was starting to see myself as a researcher. I wanted to hone my research skills. I wanted to, and I was in a fantastic position where the health board, who I was still working for at that moment, were willing to pay for me to go back and do my master's. So I was able to go to Glasgow University and do my master's as an MRes on a part-time basis. So I was working full-time, and I did that part-time. And one of the things that I had at that point, when I was working with the health board, I was also doing work with Gartnavel Inpatient Unit. And I was working, and I guess I was starting to see an area of real interest, and it has continued to be an interest to me, which was around eating disorders and body image. And body image had always been an issue that had been raised through lots of the research that I had done previously with young people by this point. But in particular, I was seeing in Gartnavel really ill young people. And the young people that I was seeing who were the illest, and the young people who I was seeing as coming back through a revolving door, were those experiencing eating disorders. So that's what I focused my master's research. And I guess for me, what was really important there, and this is the kind of third theme that I would share with you, was around, I really had to think through. So this was an interest for me. So it was me that was guiding this, granted informed by young people's interests. But I had to say, how am I going to make this research matter? The so what question. Research is great, knowledge is great, but for me, the real power in it is how it makes a difference, and how it makes a difference in terms of policy, but importantly also practice. So at that point, what I was able to do is I was able to say, right, who do I need to align in with? Now, clearly it was helpful because I was working for the NHS at that point. And as I was able to say, okay, so there's a service redesign going on within CAMHS at the minute. So I was able to become part of that service redesign team and feed in my research through that. I was also able to do presentations, but I really did think about that. And again, I think that's lasted with me to this day. So if we're about to embark on a piece of research, which sounds great, we always need to pause and stop and say, right, so what? Who is this going to, where does this align in terms of policy? And I would really encourage you to do that as early career researchers. Think about what policy does this align into? Where does this matter? And what practitioner groups is this going to influence the most? Where's the learning from this going to be best served? And really start thinking through how you can network with those practitioner groups. And I was able to do that at that point through that prevention eating disorder research. And also, again, so it's those three themes, I guess, that I wanted to share with you in those very early stages of the first 5 years, really, of me being, first 5-6 years of me being, of working and being in the early stages of my career. So the first one was around that recognition, trust and honesty. and the importance of you as a researcher and bringing that to the table and absolutely recognising the value of people's time as research participants. The second thing was around the power of participation and really valuing peer research as a methodology. And the third thing was around making it matter. So really identifying how you can align this into policy or practice and think about what change you want to create as a result of your research. And I think I'll probably stop there. That's me.
Great, thanks so much, Julie. That was really fascinating talk and really useful insights from your own experience. So thanks for sharing that. I know you've got a whole wealth of experience to draw on, and that's just a little kind of summary of all that you've kind of learned over the years. So hopefully there'll be some Q&A coming in from our participants, but I'll start off by just picking up, I suppose, on that last point about making it matter, the so what question. I mean, I think all of us are keen, you know, that's what drives us, isn't it, to actually make a difference to the world around us. But I think that can be quite difficult when you're sitting in an academic institution and thinking, well, how do I reach out? How do I actually reach the people that can use this to make a difference? The people with the money, or the people with the contacts, or the people on the ground. So have you got any advice for, you know, an early career researcher who's working on a 2 or 3 year project or their PhD? What should they do to try and kind of build those relationships with external stakeholders, I suppose?
So I guess there are a number of networks out there that actually are incredibly helpful that probably wouldn't necessarily have been there when in the early stages of my career, that I think it's just about a case of, I guess, having 1 or 2 key allies or people who can give you an insight into the areas that you're trying to influence, and just picking their brains a little bit about where you need to go. So if it's policy, is there particular policy networks, if you like, that you can align into? And most of these you can become kind of members. Now, you don't need to be in if you like, in order to be able to kind of be part of this. Now, sure, you might not be able to sit on an advisory group or whatnot, but you should be able to tap into these broader networks and really think that through. And I think also thinking about your allies when you're doing this research, now not just seeing this as, if you're interested in it, there's a high chance other people will be interested in it too, and thinking that through. We've always found it really helpful within the foundation to set up research advisory groups and kind of think through, but be realistic about the time that people can give to that, because now people are busy. So as a kind of early career researcher, think about your allies, and sometimes all you need is like 1 or 2 key allies who have got insight into the areas that you're wanting to influence, who can really kind of pick their brains and really help inform. And there are lots of things that you can do to get your publications out there. And that would be the other thing. Be inventive about, it's unlikely that people are going to go to your research within a peer-reviewed journal. So you need to think of other avenues to get it out there and be quite inventive about that and be quite thoughtful about that.
Brilliant, thanks. And I know you do a lot of work with Scottish Government and other governments too. So, you know, just if we had to do one thing to get the attention of people in government, what would it be? You know, what would be the way to kind of get them to listen and sit up to our research findings, for example? So
I think the folk that you're talking to within policy generally have a lot of other areas that they're working on. So they won't just be interested in the area that you're working on. So being able to really bring to life the findings within your research. So whether that's about you, and it can be bringing that to life either with a real case study, a real life example, if you've done qualitative research and you want to draw out as a kind of example of the issue that you're trying to highlight, or actually just kind of pull it together into a kind of fictional case study, but something that people can very easily relate to without having to read through a 40-page, 60-page, 80-page report. People aren't going to do that. And that's not to diss the work that you've done, which I'm sure is amazing, but actually just being aware that people are generally always time poor, but they're very keen on ideas. You know, people are open to ideas and they're open to innovation. So think through how you can distill your findings in a engaging way, and I think lived experience voice often helps there.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. There's another question coming now from Emily. What piece of advice do you wish someone had given you before you embarked on a career in mental health research?
I guess some of it was, I guess when I was probably quite a bit younger, I was probably a little bit felt that I wasn't an expert enough. That I wasn't an expert now. I wasn't an expert in research. I wasn't an expert in mental health. And actually, that's okay as long as you're coming to that with the right people around you and with a real willingness to learn. So in the examples that I gave you, the young people that I was speaking to, none of them were experts in that either, but they still had something important to say. And actually, for me, what was important was for me to be relatable, and to know, still have in my mind what I wanted them, that what I was trying to glean from them, what insights I was trying to get. So being clear on my questions, but actually being relatable. They didn't need me to be an expert around mental health or an expert around research. They needed me to be somebody who was relatable and was going to value them, and also be able to pull that together in a way that would have influence. So I guess for me, that would be, don't fixate too much on what you think your weaknesses are. Like just recognize that actually you will have lots of strengths, and and also it's a craft to learn, and it's an ongoing learning journey around research. So be okay with that. You won't know how to do everything really well.
Yeah. And that links to Rory was talking a little bit earlier about imposter syndrome, and I think that can hold people back when you focus on what you don't know rather than what you do. Yeah, so that's good advice. The other thing I wanted to pick up on a little bit was, so especially working with children and young people as researchers, and particularly within an academic sphere, you're not really trained to do that. And obviously it's something we want to do and something we increasingly have to do. But it's something that I think often researchers feel a bit awkward about or intimidated by, how they reach out to young people and truly give them a voice and bring them into the research. So you've worked in youth work, obviously, before you went into a research career. So have you got any advice really on building those relationships? You've talked about the importance of trust, and that can be quite challenging within a sort of short scale project. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Just try and be quite authentic. Actually, young people don't, I suppose there's always this, there's sometimes this view that young people want you to be zany and fun. A kind of pressure on you to feel that that's what you need to be. Whereas in actual fact, young people are want authentic people, and they want different people. So now just kind of, again, focus on what your strengths are and what you're bringing to that table as a kind of authentic voice, and being honest about that. And I think young people are actually really great at picking up on that quite quickly. They're very intuitive generally as a group. So they pick up on whether people are not being honest and not and hiding behind a facade, whereas in actual fact, and I suppose that's quite tricky for a researcher sometimes when you're trying to be objective and you're trying to not, actually it is okay just to let the barriers go down slightly and be yourself and be quite authentic, and not try and be what you think they want you to be.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And Rory spoke about authenticity as well this morning, so
yeah, great.
Good to hear that again. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Julie. I think we've covered all the questions and we're coming up to 5 o'clock. So we should probably bring things to a close now, but really appreciate your time. That was a really helpful, insightful talk with lots to take away from. So thanks so much. So that brings us to the end of day one, and it's been a really full and fascinating day with loads of excellent presentations and also the Ask the Expert sessions. So I'd like to thank all our speakers and contributors today, and to all of you who've joined us. I've been so impressed by all the sessions that I've attended. Do feel free to follow up with anyone that you've heard speak or who you've met in the different sessions. So obviously, if we were meeting in person, there'd be that opportunity to network, and we'd all be going out for a drink now. But in the absence of that opportunity, it's more difficult online, but do reach out to people by email, and we've included everyone's contacts in the programme so that you're able to do that. Obviously, we've had some technical issues today, so I'd just like to thank you for your patience bearing with us on those. And I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Lynn and to Claire and to Sumi, who've worked really hard behind the scenes to sort all that out, and they've done a fantastic job. Tomorrow we start again at 9:30 with a keynote from Professor Kay Tisdall from Edinburgh University, which again will be really, really great to hear from her about a bit more about her personal journey within mental health research. So we look forward to seeing you then. Don't forget to tweet using hashtag #TriumphECR. But in the meantime, after a long day on Zoom, I hope you'll all have a relaxing evening before we join each other again tomorrow. So thanks very much, everybody, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thanks all. Take care.
Thanks, Julie.